Groundwater Basin Management Agency on June 26th at 3 o'clock. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I call the roll.
Director Daddy?
Here.
Director Whitman?
Here.
Director Finch?
Here.
Chair Pages?
Here. Okay, director announcements. Jim?
Nothing. From
Andy?
No.
Bob?
Nothing.
Casitas. I'd like to congratulate Julia. She's been awarded Professional of the Year for 2024 by the American Public Works Association.
Wow. Cool.
A lot of it probably had to do with putting that pipeline in Main Street.
Love that project.
I don't know.
I did. Now we have
You can
water
blame-
flow.
You can
I'm
blame
the
Bob
one.
for that.
Well, it's in there.
Well, Richard, I think you're the one that put the number in there when we were confiscating Golden State, how much it would cost, although they overran a little.
General Manager comments.
Yes, I do have an update on the video tutorial that I mentioned last time. And if Jordan would be so kind as to share his screen on the Zoom, I'll show you where to find it. I'm not gonna force you to watch it, but I want you to at least know that it's there. So right on the homepage, you'll see on the quick links to the right, there's a video tutorial on how to complete your quarterly extraction statement, and takes you to that page. And then the tutorial itself is actually on our YouTube page, so that it's ADA compliant, and people, oh, did you not start at the beginning? So that people can turn on their closed captioning. So, do you want to maybe just start at the beginning for half a minute?
Okay, this would be the beginning.
That would be the beginning. There you go. Is there volume? Might have to turn it up.
Is there volume?
There is volume. There is audio. It's narrated and everything.
OBGMA mails statements to each well owner at the end of March, June, September, and December. Your completed form and payment is due within 30 days. Take a look at your statement from the top. OBGMA will provide recent news or information in the section at the top. The first section will show the information we have in our database for the well, including the well operator, address, phone number, contact information, and more. The state well number is shown, and if the well has a recordation number, that number will be listed. A box indicating your well's use type will be checked, and if the well has a meter, that box will also be checked. If you think the correct box is checked, please enter
Something
the
else?
document
Somebody needs to mute.
for the appropriate designation. If you have not operated your well for at least 8 hours in the past year, please provide an explanation in step 1. Step 2 is for calculating metered water use.
Okay, we could
Per
probably.
current OBGMA ordinance,
Do you wanna keep going?
all wells must be metered. A pending ordinance provides a meter exemption, but if you do not have an existing exemption, your well must be metered.
Okay, you could pause.
If you have been reporting
So it just continues to go through each of the sections of the statement and shows how to read your meter, how to do the math, few examples, what things apply, if the groundwater sustainability plan fee applies to you or not. So I'm hoping that it will be helpful for people who, we still have issues getting statements and the meter readings calculated properly. Come on in. Oh, you're gonna have to go around this way. You have to go around this way. So that's available on the website. Please take a look if you see any, issues or you want me to expand on it. It's really simple to add slides and narration to it. It was professionally narrated by my daughter because I had a cough. So, you can see it talks about meter multiplier, what the acre foot conversion is, if you've got gallons going to acre feet. Really, it just goes through step by step. And then again, if it's, more or less than 0.5 acre feet, which box to use to calculate extraction charges. If late charges apply or not, if you're past the reporting deadline, basically how to fill in every single box on there in excruciating detail. This is the part that took a little time. Who does the GSP fee apply to? Those are the classifications. And then you can see where that exclamation point is. That should be filled in depending on what meter or classification the property is. It will tell you if the GSVP applies to you or not and whether or not to fill it in. And then when all that's done, again, more examples just showing how to add it all up, calculate your fees. It's 12 minutes long, so I'm hoping that we can, and in fact, on the statements that just were mailed out last week, in the top part of the statement, I put a little notification up there that it's available on the website. And anytime CC talks to someone now to help them figure out their meter reading, she can point them to the video as well. So enough about that. Other things, Jordan and I met with Casitas Water District personnel to look at a couple sites to put monitoring wells for the purpose of the groundwater sustainability plan implementation. So I still need to get Jordan Casitas still needs to get Jordan some drawings for the pump plant and the well field to make sure there's no interference with other piping or on-site facilities. And then we can move forward with some kind of agreement with Casitas for those monitoring wells. We also met with the city out on Creek Road, and they were supportive as well. So we'll keep moving forward with that. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Julia. Okay, next item. Basin report. Jordan?
Richard.
Yeah, for the record, Mike Weaver is in attendance now. He's going to be our new representative for the mutual water companies. And welcome to the OBGMA.
Thank you. I apologize for being late. I read your announcement as being an online meeting, and so when I connected, I saw people in I said, I am in the wrong place. So,
You found us.
Very good. Today to talk about Ojai Basin conditions in June 2025. I'm calling this one June bugs. There's a lot hopping around the basin right about now, and we'll talk about all of it. It's kind of nice in some respects. It saved some time because I didn't have to update this slide, and then we didn't get any rain in the past month. This is the same as the May slide with 15.39 inches of precipitation on Nordhoff Ridge, 9.02 inches on the valley floor. And of course, the long-term hydrograph in the Key Well area. We are currently at 114.19 feet below ground surface at the Key Well, which correlates to about 78% basin capacity or 62,400 acre feet. This is the lowest we've been in a couple years, but it's about the same amount of storage and depths to water in the basin as we had at the spring highs of 2019 and 2020, back to back. those two peaks that you see just to the left, about the same depth to water, around 115 feet. Of course, things are still dropping, and we'll probably expect that to continue through the summer and into the early fall at least. Zoomed in over the past couple of years, about 75-foot vertical scale here. You see the big peak from the 2023 to 2024 water year, the relatively small amount of precipitation and recharge we had in 2024, 2025, and the recession of groundwater levels picking up right where they left off, and continuing to decline as expected with pumping in the basin. That estimate again was about 1,600 acre feet of recharge that made its way to this part of the basin in the 2024-2025 water year, and we'll see how that correlates to the extraction totals from all of the statements that CC's just mailed out. Budgetarily speaking, I'll give you one guess as to how much water's flowing into the basin as surface water right about now. We got a lot of zeros up there. In fact, the only spot we've got any water whatsoever coming into the basin as surface water, at least to the basin boundary, is right at Senior Canyon at the Ladera Bridge, where we estimate basically the lowest we can, about 1/100th of a cubic foot per second, which you could probably say is all of about maybe 50 gallons a minute, maybe 5 gallons a minute. It depends on the time of day, because at this time of year, there's so much transpiration going up in the headwaters with long days, hot days, and all of the plants in bloom. After all, June is still busting out all over, and that takes up a lot of soil moisture and spring water and creek flow. Going out of the basin, we have relatively consistent to last month, actually up by a little bit. We measured 2.9 CFS escaping the basin as surface water, about 1/3 of CFS coming out at Montgomery or Fox Barranca on the west side, and on San Antonio Creek proper, about 2.57 CFS. Part of that difference between last month and this month might have to do with that we got the flow rate later in the day for the May measurement. This June measurement was a little bit earlier in the morning, so it was potentially that much change hour to hour this time of year. All right, I mentioned June bugs. There's quite a bit of drilling activity going on. There's about 5 spots, or about 9 wells that we've seen drilled in the OBGMA jurisdiction over this 2025. Just yesterday over on Orange Road, the drillers got to basically the bottom of the barrel, which is actually shown in that upper left-hand corner, an image he sent me. Pretty difficult to tell that from really good-looking gravels, but the subtleties are some of the pink spots in there are clayey. Some of the bluish spots are also part of the bedrock assembly, and quite a bit of cemented older alluvium. The E-log came through this morning from that well. I believe they're going to send this to me and to OBGMA for our collective records. But you'll note in this particular E-log shown there in the middle, pretty distinctively poor quality water at the bottom of this borehole. That's about a 520-foot deep borehole, and the lower 100 feet of it or so is really clay / cemented and or poorer quality water. The way this particular logger works is those shaded areas in the darker gray in the center curve of the log tend to be those which are most resistive, most sandy, most gravelly, and most likely to yield water to the well. So you can see the stratification of the Ojai Basin in real time with a well that's just got drilled yesterday. Not a lot of changes from what we've known for a couple of years, but it's always nice to get a good new piece of data on the basin here with respect to quality, quantity, thickness, and of course basin depth. The picture on the upper right is another well that's going in, Shippey Lane. This one is just getting started, and of course both these wells are recently permitted by the OBGMA. We have a few other wells, and I mentioned the 2025 drilling within OBGMA jurisdiction, And that's distinctly different from the Ojai Basin GSA and the Ojai Basin alluvium. A lot of people have this question, and it's worth repeating. The OBGMA jurisdiction was established based on the enabling legislature and is shown in the light blue shading here in this graphic. It's a straight out of the County View application website that one can visit. The more purplish tinge is the Ojai Basin alluvium. So it would stand to reason that there can be wells within the OBGMA jurisdiction, but outside of the Ojai Basin as delineated by Bulletin 118 and the DWR. And that's important because some of these wells are drilled there. We had the well on Longhorn Lane drilled earlier this year. We had the one on Reeves Road drilled earlier this year. We have the 5 monitoring wells that Ojai Valley Inn just completed last week in that no man's land between the alluvial portion of the basin and the jurisdictional boundary. And then we have the 2 wells that we discussed earlier today. So a pretty good spread of new activity in 2025. And every borehole's exploration, we learn something new from every single one. And the same is true here. In the one on Reeves Road, we found literally the edge of the perched layer, the perching aquifer, that far to the east. And it's only that far to the south, but the alluvium continues for several hundred feet below that, and it gives way to a more cemented older alluvium / bedrock material for the deepest 100 or so feet. I think that was a 700-foot deep well. Over on Longhorn Lane, that's about a 300 some odd foot deep well, and it had to be sealed all the way through the perching layer and the perching clay. And that's important because that's in compliance with the OBGMA resolutions or ordinances that establish that as a way to protect the upper system, the upper perch system, or SWESI, southwest uppermost saturated zone, from the production zones where that particular well extracts groundwater only, exclusively. And the 2 that are up to the north we talked about as they're being drilled as we speak. Back to the surface flow. This is that 5 gallons per minute or so coming through, or what 0.01 CFS looks like, flowing under the bridge at Ladera Road. A lot of things are dry going forward, so you'll see the dynamic difference between last month and this month with every click. Can you tell the difference? Maybe a little browner?
Yellow versus.
Pretty subtle.
Yeah.
All right, how about this one? Thatcher Road. Dry then, dry now. Now, not a lot of changes. Sunlight changes. You can tell it was taken a little earlier in the day. The shadow of the bridge is cascading further to the west. How about this one? The dry crossing at the confluence of Gridley and Senior Canyon, where San Antonio Creek truly begins. Dry last month, dry this month. Maybe a little browner with the willow there in the foreground. Relatively no difference. Down here it's a little different though. This is where the perch system groundwater exfiltrates from the basin into San Antonio Creek. You can see where it is in 2 scales in map view, just to the south end of Gridley Road, where that blue dot is, and in the inset map where the yellow camera is, taking where we took the photograph. And it's pretty hard to see where the water is starting to flow here because it's sort of hidden underneath some of the phreatophytes that are there at the commencement of San Antonio Creek that day. And this day is yesterday. Where it discharges from the basin, this is off under Creek Road at the Fox Barranca or Montgomery Creek, call it what you will. Pretty interesting stuff always going on here. One of the biggest changes we see is the amount of graffiti that, that tends to emerge as folks get more or less artistic as time goes on. But then there's these guys too. I thought this was pretty cool. This is an interesting little invertebrate, and if you cook them and eat them, they're pretty tasty. They're non-native crayfish that tend to abound and really find a cool little home right there at the end of Montgomery Street or this little Barranca where it comes out from under Creek Road. I haven't eaten one. Most of the time.
I think that's a wise decision.
Yeah. I agree with you, Jim. What I thought was interesting about this is how camouflage he was. Most of the time when we see these in these environments, they tend to be much redder, like in a dying status. Like this guy looked pretty healthy. And over where we measure the flow on San Antonio Creek proper, this is what that 2.5 CFS or so looks like. You can still see a little bit of alluvium present at ground surface there. And of course a nice shady day, but still plenty of water flowing out despite how little rain we had, how little water's coming into the basin, and how deep the water levels in the main aquifer system are. They're literally dropping quite a bit, but the discharge, the stage, and the points of daylighting haven't changed very much because this water is coming out of that southwest uppermost saturated zone, or what we also call the perched aquifer. Way down over at Old Creek Road, just before the confluence, we got very similar conditions, maybe even a little bit less than what's flowing out of the Ojai Basin. Again, largely due to quite a bit of the phreatophytes that are taking up that water along the San Antonio Creek corridor between the Ventura River and the Ojai Basin. What's coming forward? Seasonal temperature outlooks are warm and warmer, and interestingly, we're expecting normal precipitation, which is kind of zero right about now anyway. So it's always interesting when the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration puts out publications like this that say you got an even chance of no rain in the southwestern United States over the course of the coming 3 months, July, August, and September. We'll welcome what we get, but we're not expecting much, and in that sense, I agree with Noah. El Nino surface oscillation conditions still show to be neutral or normal precipitation and warmer temperature. Any questions?
Locally, did NOAA lose a forecaster?
I have not heard, although we do see quite a bit of removal of websites where there was quite a bit of useful data at the federal level, which is sad to see. I mean, it was pretty easy to get a lot of national water information system data on surface flow and groundwater levels and spring water. Gone now. It's hard to get that data. We'll have to go to their source.
Jordan, what's the purpose of the 5 monitoring wells at the end?
So those are put in so that the end can monitor their stewardship of their water resources, how much water they're applying to the course, how much what the quality is, and they've got a couple of different operations, I think, that are going on for water conservation and recharge on site. They just want to document that.
Any other questions? Jordan, isn't it, it's hard to estimate what it is, but even though there's no surface flows coming into the basin, there are subsurface flows that continue.
Yes, there certainly are. Certainly what we're seeing is only what is present in those portions of the basin. So for all the reporting we've done on that inflow over the years, it's a very conservative number and most likely lower than what's actually coming in, either through mountain front recharge from the bedrock formations, subcropping to the alluvium, or water that's just below the surface in those alluvial channels that enter the basin.
Any other questions? Thank you, Jordan.
All right, thank you.
Okay, the next item is public comments on items that are not on today's agenda. Are there any public comments? Okay, hearing none. Item 7 is the consent agenda, our financial report for May and minutes of the May 29th meeting. Comments, or can I have a motion?
Move to approve?
Second.
And call the roll.
Director Daddick?
Yes.
Director Whitman?
Yes.
Director Finch?
Yes.
Director Weaver?
Yes.
Chair Hayes?
Yes. Okay, next up is action items. Let's review and accept Mutual Water Company's representative and alternate. After this, you're officially on the hook for this.
Yeah, we received
Excuse me.
resolutions from the three mutual water companies to appoint Mike Weaver as their representative with Michael Springer as the alternate.
Need a
And I-
motion?
We're gonna do the swearing in.
After you approve it,
Oh, we have to
or
approve it.
accept it?
Do we
Accept it?
motion it, or what do we do?
Well, it's agendized, excuse me, review and accept, right? It's up to the mutual water companies to select their
Okay.
representative on the board. So there's really not a lot of action for this board to do, except to accept their appointment, the appointment of the mutual water companies.
So all in favor of accepting it, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Now we'll do the swearing in.
You're gonna protect the Constitution.
I know.
Do solemnly affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California. That I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
All right, thank you. Congratulations. We look forward to working with you. Sometimes these meetings are exciting, but most of the time they are not.
The not is the good meeting.
Yes, yes. All right, item 8B. Julia?
So item 8B had previously been on last month's agenda, and it was tabled until this meeting. This regards the well at 741 Saddle Lane and the efforts that were made for meter compliance with that well, and the imposition of fines and penalties, and then the correspondence between that well owner's attorney and our attorney. And the recommendation, or I guess the review, is to consider rescinding the fines and penalties that the board imposed back in March.
Questions or comments?
My thought is that the deadline that we provide for compliance is important to our operations, and so it doesn't really make up for what we needed to have it proved to us after. So I'm in favor of enforcing the penalty that we originally approved.
Any other discussion?
Is that discussion, or does that take a second? Is that a motion? Does that take a second, or we're just open for discussion?
Right now, I'd say we're open for discussion.
Okay, well, what I would do is I would concur what council and board member Whitman say. You've got to have a license, and you know you need to have it with you, and you have certain timeframes and certain regulations, and I'm not really sure with half a dozen notices and the timeframe and the requests to get the compliance done and no representative at last meeting, we could have shortcut this thing a long time ago. So anyhow, that's my thought. Let the penalties and fines stand.
Does management have a recommendation on this? Or are you neutral?
I think Peter and I have discussed it. The purpose of sending out all the notices was to get people's meter information, and if they didn't have a meter, to have them install it. So it appears from the correspondence that they had a meter. They were very late in providing the proof of that, and the initial documentation that they provided was difficult to read. It took a lot to get this information out of them. Were they in compliance? Yes, they had a meter. Was it a lot of effort to get that information out of them, yes, but we do have it. They have a meter. If they, going forward, their statements should indicate what the meter readings are. That's where I stand on it. I don't know if Peter has anything. Yeah.
The staff recommendation is to rescind, I mean, for essentially the reasons that Julia pointed out. It turns out that this well has all along been in compliance with respect to a functioning meter. It's just that the operators didn't provide the information on a timely basis to the agency. And so that's the question that the board is faced with, you know. The penalty was imposed because at the time of the penalty hearing, it was impossible to tell whether this well was actually metered with a functioning meter. And that information has come through after the fact, where it does appear as though all along the well was properly metered. But as Julia pointed out, it took a lot of effort to extract that information from the well operator, and we finally got it. And so on that basis, you know, staff is recommending that this penalty be rescinded. However, the board can go in whatever direction it wants on this, because the fact of the matter is the operator hadn't demonstrated compliance by the deadline set by the board. They were provided notice, they had the opportunity, and they didn't provide the information by that time period. So that's the context, and really it's, you know, at the board's discretion what to do with this. Yeah, I think our primary goal is to get people in compliance. Some are harder than others, unfortunately. You know, I don't know that you know, all the things we have to do, I don't know that I want to drag this out any further than it is. I mean, if they fall out of compliance again, and then you hit them with a hammer, but it's not an easy process to deal with this fine, so that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I'm torn, because there also is the fine, the 10% for being late, which that should absolutely hit them on how their extraction paper works. So I'm not quite sure where I'm at.
How far back were they late, do you know?
Do you mean as far as the meter compliance part? We had given everyone till, what were the original letters?
January.
Yeah, January, yeah, the end of January, and then we didn't get their paperwork until, I think the week of the board meeting in March, so
So
around
they
March
weren't-
24th.
You know, they weren't paying any of the fees?
They are not 100% compliant on extraction statements, but that's a separate matter. So I don't want to cloud the issue with that.
Okay.
As far as if the board decided to keep the penalties and fees, there's a timing if we want to put these on property taxes and all that, which is July 1st, which is going to be sort of impossible to do at this point. We don't necessarily even have to do that this year. It could wait until the following year and put it on the property tax bill. That's another option, I guess, is to kick it down the road a little bit and see if the statements start coming in with meter readings like they're supposed to. That's my biggest concern, is that the meter readings happen.
I have a question based upon Jim's comment. I had kind of seen it as an all or nothing proposition, and Jim mentioned the late fee versus the non-compliant. So how does that break out differently?
Well, the late fee applies to extraction statements that aren't filed on time. It doesn't, there was no late fee associated with having a meter installed or not.
Okay.
They're separate.
Yeah, so the issue here is that they did not demonstrate compliance within the time frame that they were given to demonstrate their compliance.
Correct.
And how do we respond to that, or do we waive it? I guess my concern is that I don't want people to report late. I want them to report on time. Otherwise, our information isn't up to date. But that's just my thought.
And that means our information's not up to date. If I read this correctly, we
Can you
have
turn your
a
mic on?
if I read this correctly, we have a $2,800 charge and a $500 charge.
Correct.
And the $500 charge is a fine for not complying, is that correct?
It was a one-time fine of $500 and a civil penalty of $2,800, which was $50 per day for 56 days. So that was from January 30th to the board meeting date in March, was
Well-
the 56 days.
What if, do we, Peter, I guess this goes to you. Could we leave the
Fine.
fine for $500 in place and waive the 2,800 because they did have the meter, they just didn't show us?
Yeah, absolutely, the board could do that. They could rescind in part and reaffirm in part the resolution 2025-01.
I'd make that motion, that we rescind the 2,800 daily, well, the daily penalty totaling $2,800 and leave the $500 fine in place on this.
I'd second that.
I would just like to make sure they pay us, and we don't have to go through the property tax process for $500. Okay, I have a motion and a second. I'm going to call the roll. Oh, excuse me. Is there anyone online who has any comments on this? No.
Richard,
Yes.
this is John Whaley. My question is, what costs were incurred through all this that OBGMA has paid for?
Yes.
I don't have a hard number for that, John, but it was several $1,000s in my time and attorney's time.
And is that something that OBGMA did nothing wrong? You did everything correctly. So I mean, I'm just a backup to Bob Daddy, but does it also set a precedent that people can do this and then there's no ramifications for it?
Well, I think the issue of how much it costs us to do this, based on our attorney's analysis of this, we don't really have the authority to levy a penalty based on what we expended on this. It's simply a penalty for their not complying. So I don't think we can do that.
And that, you know, that's kind of where my thought goes, because I also don't want to spend more money on this. So it's, you know, similar to those insurance companies that settle things. And this is kind of a little bit on both sides of the fence.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I just, you know, it's like thousands of dollars.
I fully agree.
Anyway, okay,
it's
that's
just that kind of
just my
business.
comment. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Any other comments? Okay, we want to call the roll?
Director Daddy?
You want to restate what the motion is?
500 in penalty. waive.
500 in penalty, and we
Waiving
waive
20.
the $50 daily fine, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Director Whitman?
Yes?
Director Finch?
Yes.
Director Weaver?
Yes.
Chair Hages?
Yes. Okay, thank you. The next is authorize $15,300 in access support services to J Street Technologies. Julia?
Yeah, J Street Technology has been a great resource for us in getting our access database really dialed in, helping us to clean up a lot of the data, a lot of extraneous reporting and things that are not useful have been cleared out. What I'd like to do, the next kind of step forward, is to put it on the cloud instead of just being in the office, so that because I'm not in the office all the time and I have, another job, I can access it from wherever I am and work with Cece and Tara and the consultant a lot more efficiently without us all having to physically be in the office. It will be limited access to only the three of us, with, password protected and all of that. The cloud migration services that she estimated was between 40 and 60 hours for a maximum cost of $15,300. There's a lot of things in the email attachment, SQL Server, all of that. A lot of things that are beyond my experience and expertise, but they are the right firm to help us do this, and I think it will help us operate a lot more efficiently.
And then what is the monthly cost of it being on the cloud?
She has that in there, the $15 a month for
That's
cloud
it?
hosting, yeah. So I would like the authorization to move forward with that.
Any more
It's-
comments?
It's similar to actually Casitas's utility billing, and they have one system for billing and timesheets and purchasing and project management, and I can get to that from anywhere I'm working. So it's really similar to that, and it makes me feel like I'm a lot more efficient.
I have a question. What is our general manager's financial authority? I mean, this is a $15,000 item, maybe 12, and I'm just wondering,
It's $2,500 is my maximum authority
that's,
without going to the board.
that seems like you can't operate at all with that type of constraint. And so I'm gonna make a motion, we approve this, and at a later meeting, review the authority of our general manager to make these decisions based on their expertise instead of bringing it to the board.
Second.
Call the roll?
Director Daddy?
Yes,
Director Whitman?
Yes.
Director Finch?
Yes.
Director Weaver?
Yes.
Chair Hedges?
Yes. Okay, the next item is a public hearing. This is a public hearing on the proposed ordinance to establish an exemption from the agency's well metering requirements. So we'll open the public hearing. And Julia, you want to give us an overview of what this is?
Sure. This was also one that was brought up at the May meeting and was tabled because we did get some feedback from some well owners that this would affect, that they didn't have enough time to review the ordinance and they might have comments. So we reposted the public notice in the paper and on the website. I have spoken with that well owner. Their situation was they have a well, they operate it the 8 hours, and that's it, just to keep it active for the county. So I said, put a meter on it when you do that. Then then it's no harm, no foul. Just take a picture, a reading before you pump it for 8 hours, take a reading after you pump it for 8 hours, and tell us what those numbers are. I think that's something very workable on our side for the handful of cases where that might apply. The rest of them, if it's a well that they're not planning to use and they're not actively pumping it 8 hours a year, this ordinance is based on them getting a certificate of exemption from the county and showing that that open well is not a hazard, a public safety issue to the basin.
Okay, any comments from the public for the public hearing?
And I'll just add, while we're waiting to hear if anybody's got any public comment. So there was one change made to the ordinance since it was in front of the board last month. When the board reviewed it, they asked, let's say the question came up like, what about existing extraction facilities, and should there be a deadline within which operators of existing extraction facilities need to apply for this exemption? And so that's the change that's been made to the ordinance. There's now a deadline for any operator of an existing extraction facility, which is defined as existing as of the effective date of the ordinance. The deadline for those folks, if they intend to pursue a metering exemption, they need to get their application in by December 31st of this year. That means if they don't already have a certificate of exemption from the county, they need to go through that process, get it, and then come back to OBGMA and apply for their meter exemption. So that's the change. Otherwise, the ordinance is the same as what was reviewed last month.
Okay. Did we receive any written comments?
No, we did not.
There's no public comments, and I'll close the public hearing, and the board can discuss this.
I think Peter kind of covered what was going to be my question, but I have this memory that we kicked the proposed ordinance around pretty thoroughly, asked Peter to make adjustments, and I'm assuming you made all the adjustments that we recommended, and so I think I was satisfied when I left that meeting. I'm not going to change my mind now.
Okay. Any other comments?
Well, last month, there were several on just the cost, because it is costly to continue to get the exemption. It is not. But a well is an asset, and if they're gonna have it, it costs money to keep up an asset. And given what's happening in other parts of the state on costs, I think it's a good, well-written ordinance, that it is expensive to keep the hole in the ground as just a hole in the ground, or you use it, one or the other. So I'm for it.
Any other comments? I know Jim and I work with Peter and Julia on this quite a bit, and I think Peter and Julia have done a good job of taking our comments and incorporating them into this, so I think it's as reasonable as we can probably get. Any other comments? If not, do I have a motion?
Motion to accept
Adopt.
the resolution changes, or the ordinance changes.
Okay. Have a
I'll second.
Okay, call the roll.
Director Daddy?
Yes.
Director Whitman?
Yes?
Director Finch?
Yes.
Director Weaver?
Yes.
Chair Hages?
Yes. Okay, the next item is a legislative ad hoc committee update. Is there anything to report on that?
I don't have anything.
And the meter compliance update, Jim and I finished our work tonight.
Agreed.
All right, if there's no other questions or comments, we are adjourned at 3:48. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.